Welcome back. Well, today we're joined by an inspiring young voice in national dialogue, Gerson Nehumbo, a member of the 6th session of the Children's Parliament and the Chairperson of the Education and ICT Committee. Gerson recently participated in the National Agenda for Children 2025 to 2030 Strategy Development Workshop, a critical session for shaping the future of Namibia's younger citizens. As someone representing the youth at such a strategic level, Gerson brings us valuable insight into how children's voices are being included in policy. Gerson is on the line. Good evening and welcome, Gerson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, ma'am. Good evening.
Well, to start with, let's gauge your general experience of the workshop. How did it feel being part of a national workshop that's setting the agenda for children in Namibia for the next 5 years?
I mean, to be honest, being part of this national process was both an honor, yet it was a very tough strategic responsibility. Not only do I have to keep in mind all the children that are in Namibia, but it was also quite pressurous, if I should say. It's quite rare to find young leaders like myself to be in positions like this or workshops like the next. However, it came with a reminder that every child, and I mean every single child in Namibia, does deserve to be advocated for and does deserve to be well represented for. And I advocated for inclusive and benefits that basically included every Namibian child. Moreover, it was very educational, and I was very grateful for the opportunity.
Also talk to us from your perspective of, Chairperson of the Education and ICT Committee in the Children's Parliament. What specific priorities did you advocate for? I heard you highlighted there just now in your response.
I mean, my interventions were very evidence-based, yet people-centered. However, we have to keep in mind that the pillars that I've discussed or I've educated on was basically motions that were tabled during the 6th session of the Children's Parliament. So just in detail, I advocated for a dedicated structure to institutionalize child participation beyond the Children's Parliament. And this basically included a structure of its own that ensured that when the children make decisions that they are consistent and they are well evaluated for. And it was a success to see that the NEC established a different structure for children only, making child participation a major role within the whole Namibian agenda policy. Secondly, when it came to education, I advocated for inclusive and quality education for all learners, including the marginalized communities. On the other hand, I also spoke about the importance of mental health and psychosocial support for learners. This led to basically a discussion that called on a specialization when it comes to life teaching, etc. A different approach from learners with disabilities too. And moreover, the importance of nutrition with reference to the feeding programs that are currently going on and the importance of ED centers within our Namibian system. And lastly, I advocated for the boy child, and basically those were the discussions that stood out for me personally.
One of the main goals of the national agenda is to ensure, children's voices are heard. So do you feel that the youth were genuinely listened to during these discussions?
Yes, and the difference was evident on how our contributions shaped outcomes. For example, the endorsement of mental health as a standalone pillar, that was a direct result of youth-led impact and the new structure. So I would divide it by two. Number one, the fact that we got the NEC to reopen a different pillar for mental health and psychosocial support as a stand-alone, and be a different pillar for children with disabilities. And also the fact that they had our call and gave us our own structure to ensure that child participation just doesn't happen on the Children's Parliament, but it starts off from the schools, moving up to the regional and moving up to the national level.
And what were some of the key themes, Gerson, that were raised at the workshop?
I mean, with reference to education and digital access, our major challenges was basically the educational inequality between urban and rural areas, and also learners with disabilities and special learning needs, seeing that there's a different approach taken to this kind of needs, and we are addressing that when we promote inclusivity, this type of learning should also be taken in accountability. When it came to digital connectivity, it was a thing of the gap and infrastructure when it comes to rural areas and marginalized communities, and also the resources, of course. But then we came to a conclusion that states that digital transformation is necessarily not how many computers are they in the classroom, but moreover, how big of a gap are we moving away from what we call the old norms, writing on the chalkboard, etc.
In your view, Gerson, what needs to happen next to ensure, that the ideas from the strategy workshop are turned into real action for children across Namibia?
If you look at it from a very realistic point of view, we actually just need 6 things. Implementation capacity, number 2, youth inclusivity, monitoring and participation, and number 3, constant feedback and reports. What we basically need is that we have to understand that the policies are only effective as their rollout mechanism. So that whatever we do, we need to ensure that we understand how and why we are doing this, okay? Secondly, young people must be involved in ensuring that everything is done according to the discussions that were held. Because lately, we are used as tokenism. Basically, going to a discussion, we discuss something else, and then when it comes back, it's not the way we've discussed it. And lastly, the data obtained must be sent back to the communities so that the communities, the young leaders, and everyone within that surrounding sees the progress step by step by step. And also just to give them reassurance that their voices are actually being heard and they are just not going in the air for mahala.
Gerson, were there any moments or exchanges during the workshop that really stood out to you? Something that inspired you or perhaps even challenged your perspective?
To be honest, there was a lot. I mean, I was in a environment whereby we had doctors and what we call PhD holders. So it was not easy as a youth leader. However, there was one discussion that broke up about the boy child, and it changed the perspective of how we advocate for the boy child. And we came to the realization that the boy child goes beyond just the advocacy for their mental state. We are talking about how well they are taken care of in every society. When we talk about the girl child, we talk about sanitary pads, we talk about their hygiene, we talk about how they're handled in society. But when we talk about the boy child, we often forget the hygiene part, which has to include now shavers and what we call the smart card and whatsoever. So this discussion broke up, and it actually made us realize that when we advocate for the boy child, we should move away from advocating for one perspective and actually advocate for the boy child in whole, starting from their hygiene to their mental state and to their future well-being, and how open and how optimistic this child actually is.
Just lastly, Gerson, looking ahead, what message would you like to send to your fellow young Namibians about their role in shaping national policies such as this one?
Like I say always, my message to the youth is quite always simple yet very urgent. But this time, let's take a very different approach. So last time I advised the youth to be more realistic in whatever they ask for or demand for. But today we are going to say that, dear youth, your voice, or should I say our voices, do really matter, okay? But then real policies need active members. We need to remain educated on what's currently going on, what policies are in place. We need to attend the forums. And then lastly, we need to educate what's going on within our society and in our communities before we go on a national level. But then, in conclusion, dear youth, united we shall stand, but ever if we are divided, we will fall. And let's do it with a passion. If we don't do it with a passion, then there's no reason for us to actually do it. So, dear youth, let's go out there and let's make the best out of it.
Gerson Nehumbo, it was lovely having you here with us. It was lovely speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
When we come back after this very brief break, our conversations here on the Daily Roundup continues.